Kimito was a virgin loser who had never touched a girl in his life. However, everything takes a turn when he is suddenly kidnapped and forced to become the only boy in a school of girls that have never interacted with a boy before. Now he will have to endure all the baddies of the student body wanting to take a taste from his sausage. On the day he was kidnapped, Kimito was half asleep in class when his friend woke him up for lunch. But before this couch dweller lazy bum can even process this monumental task, a group of muscular men storms into the hallway. They snatch this poor boy and haul him out of the school like a sack of potatoes. Look like a pig shelter. A prim and proper maid greets him and introduces herself as Miyuki. Kimito asks her if this is a prank, but she totally ignores him. She explains that this is Seiken Girls Academy, an exclusive hidden school for the daughters of the richest families in the country. These girls have been so sheltered from the real world that their social skills are basically non-existent. They've never seen a cell phone, eaten fast food, or even talked to a male who wasn't their 70-year-old butler. Then Kimito is dragged before the principal, a hot woman named Maria, who drops the bombshell. The girls at this academy are social outcasts and have no idea what the world of a common man is like. Upon graduation, they enter the real world and completely lose their minds when faced with the mundane, normal life. So the school has devised a brilliant, totally not insane plan. Abduct a random guy to be a showman sample, a living, breathing commoner for the girls to study and analyze like a fluttering insect in a lab. Kimito, still trying to process his own abduction, can't understand why he was chosen for this ridiculous mission. Like a complete psychopath, Miyuki explains that they needed someone perfectly average, a guy with no special talents, who would pose no threat to the girls' purity. The school even conducted an in-depth background check on Kimito for the past 6 months. They concluded that since Kimito is always hanging out with boys, he must have no interest in the opposite gender. Leaves the proud thigh connoisseur utterly horrified. Kimito frantically tries to deny this accusation and insists that he is straight as an arrow, but Maria and Miyuki hit him with an ultimatum. He can either play along with the gay role, or they'll have to remove his little instrument to ensure the student's safety. Kimito makes the only logical decision. He leans into the harmless lie and confirms his deep, passionate love for muscular male physiques. Then he is immediately taken to a classroom full of curious girls with butter-smooth thighs. Before Kimito can even adjust his biological instrument, a blonde beauty named Reiko steps forward with her juggernauts and introduces herself as the class president. This girl embodies grace and politeness, but Kimito's response is awkward at best. The girls are utterly fascinated by this commoner behavior and begin whispering and gossiping among themselves. But the moment his phone rings, all the girls in the class lose their stupid minds. Miyuki quickly takes charge of the situation and assures the girls that it stands there in stunned disbelief. But being the responsible one, Reiko, the blondie, volunteers for the terrifying task of returning it. She prepares for this mission like it's a diplomatic summit, writing a thank you letter, decorating a box, and placing chocolates inside, all just to hand back a phone. The poor girl with massive juggernauts is so nervous that when she finally presents it to Kimito, she nearly faints from the absolute culture shock. Acting quickly, Kimito has to catch her just to keep her from face-planting on the floor. Just as he thinks it can't get any weirder, a short-haired girl named Aika ambushes him and drags him out to the garden. She desperately tries to kiss Kimito, while he struggles to control this little freak. It turns out that Aika heard a rumor that kissing a commoner will grant her a wish. Kimito repeatedly tells her it's nothing but nonsense, but being a guy, he decides to mess with her. He tells Aika that if she jumps 3 times and barks like a dog, her wish will actually come true. To his utter disbelief, this stupid freak actually starts jumping and barking, desperate to fulfill her mysterious wish. She even rolls around the garden for this, but just then, Reiko appears with her friends, worried for Kimito's safety. At this point, Aika doesn't respond. She simply gets up and frantically runs away from the garden in pure embarrassment. It turns out that Aika never speaks to anyone in the school, as she is painfully self-conscious. Later, Miyuki shows Kimito to his new room, which comes with an extra layer of security to keep him safe from the excited chicks at night. To his shock, the room is an exact replica of his old one, right down to the butter-smooth thigh posters on the wall. Since he is not allowed to be a straight man in this school, Kimito frantically rips them down in a panic. Before she leaves, Miyuki informs him that she's now his personal maid, but she makes it perfectly clear that she has no intention of actually helping him because she finds him weird. As soon as Miyuki leaves, Aika bursts into his room, furious that her wish didn't come true. She continues yelling at Kimito, but is suddenly distracted by the commoner artifacts in his room. Aika reveals her deepest wish is to become popular and make friends, but her blunt personality always gets in the way. Seeing an opportunity, Kimito proposes a deal. He promises to teach her about commoner culture if she helps him navigate the academy. He then hands her a video game controller, and within minutes, she's hooked on the video game. Technologia! Fired up to chase her dream, Aika suggests they create a commoners club, where they will recruit more and more girls over time. After a moment's hesitation, Kimito agrees, and Aika is filled with a joy she hasn't felt in years. Later that evening, Kimito takes on a big stage to explain how a commoner lives his life. The aristocratic girls bombard him with questions, and Kimito hesitantly explains things like train tickets to the amazed students. Seeing the genuine excitement on her classmates' faces, Aika feels a glimmer of hope that maybe she can finally fit in and become the popular girl she's always dreamed of. The next day, Kimito receives a rude awakening from his personal maid, Miyuki. She wastes no time reminding him how much she resents her new duties, which naturally freaks out Kimito. Miyuki explains that as his maid, she's required to help him get dressed, but this is too much for the poor boy to handle. For a brief moment, she even doubts whether Kimito is truly a straight man, but he eventually surrenders himself and lets the maid dress him. To avoid becoming the main exhibit in the commoner freak show, Miyuki advises Kimito to use the back door to get to class. Apparently, his very presence causes a level of excitement usually reserved for boy bands and free pizza, but of course, even the back door isn't safe. He immediately runs into Aika. The two then walk to the class together, where Aika declares that she also uses the back door, thinking this is some kind of cool kid secret. She then reminds him that their commoner club activities are starting today, a club he basically invented on the spot to manage her frantic quest for social relevance. Along the way, Kimito tries to strike a deal with Aika. He'll teach her the sacred ways of the common folk if she explains how this schizo academy actually works. Aika is surprised he'd ask her instead of the school's reigning queen bee Reiko. Since Kimito has the social grace of a runaway train, he explains that Reiko is just too cute and makes him nervous, whereas Aika does not. This earns him a well-deserved slap, and the little brat storms away in fury. Just as they reach the classroom, they're intercepted by the flawless Reiko herself. She greets both Kimito and his eccentric friend. Though Aika remains the social outcast she usually is, Reiko then proposes a welcome party for Kimito after class, and he nervously agrees. The suggestion drips with elegance and good intentions, and it immediately sends a jolt of jealousy through Aika. During class, Reiko soaks up all the praise from both her teacher and even from her annoying aristocratic classmates, leaving Aika isolated once again. But when Aika tries the jump, she ends up in a position that boys seem to love for some reason. As the poor girl sits alone, bruised and battered, Kimito receives moist attention from other girls, hoping they'll get some commoner action in bed. Moments later, Kimito finds himself at the welcome party, which is painfully posh for his taste. When it's time to order food, he doesn't understand a single item and simply orders some Japanese food. However, the maids arrive with a cup of instant ramen, courtesy of his arch-enemy Miyuki. The gesture feels less like a thoughtful meal and more like a passive-aggressive jab at his social standing. But Reiko and the other girls are completely baffled by the concept of instant noodles, staring at the pot as if it's an alien artifact. Kimito explains that simply adding hot water will cook it, a revelation that blows their stupid sheltered minds. He offers them a taste, and the girls eagerly present their finest porcelain bowls and silver spoons. They're instantly hooked by the taste, while their faces light up with pure joy of discovering cheap processed food. Meanwhile, Aika is spotted eating alone, mumbling to herself that she prefers the solitude. Later that night, they all get dressed for the dance party, where Reiko raises a toast to Kimito. A full brass band strikes up a tune, and the students begin dancing like a swarm of mosquitoes. Reiko notices Kimito looking uncomfortable and asks what's wrong. He admits he doesn't know how to dance, as it's not exactly a regular pastime in the world of ordinary people. But seeing her disappointment, Kimito reluctantly agrees to give it a shot. What follows is a spectacle of awkward, clumsy movements that the other girls mistake for authentic commoner dance moves. He nearly sends Reiko flying, which could have been disastrous, but he manages to catch her in a dramatic dip. For some godforsaken reason, this chaotic performance earns a round of applause from the entire room of stupid chicks. Kimito finally meets up with Aika for their commoner club meeting. She gets angry at him for being late, but Kimito explains he was detained by the welcome party from hell. Aika is eager to begin her transformation into a popular girl and asks him what the books are for. Kimito explains they're manga, but the little brat has no idea what that is. He explains how to read them, and Aika dives in, becoming completely engrossed in the storyline. She spends hours and hours going through the manga books, not realizing Kimito is looking at her with thirsty flagpoles. Her innocence is on full display, as she starts to believe that the over-the-top stories are real. Aika thinks that all teenage commoners must have superpowers, so now, she wants to become a supernatural psychic and enslave the commoner to fulfill her nighttime desires. Kimito has never encountered someone this dumb, so he decides to troll this little girl and plays along. He teaches her how to summon her powers, and Aika immediately puts them to the test, attempting to stop time. As she stands confused, Kimito, the master prankster, pretends to be frozen in place. Convinced she possesses godlike abilities, Aika taunts him and bounces around the room with pure delight. She flips her skirt in Kimito's face and even leans in for a kiss on the lips. But the poor boy can't handle the pressure and breaks character. Aika thinks that she can only stop time for a minute, but just then, Kimito reveals that he was just messing around with her. Once again, the furious Aika lands a solid uppercut on his face. Meanwhile, Reiko is taking a hot bath with her juggernaut watermelons, dreaming about a steamy night with Kimito. But just as she opens the door to leave, she bumps into Kimito, who gets to peek at every curve in her majestic body. After a moment of awkwardness, he apologizes profusely and runs away like a startled child. However, Reiko is completely in love with him and starts blushing uncontrollably. The next day in class, the two sit together, where Reiko is floating on cloud 9, secretly dreaming of marrying him. Since her innocence was compromised last night, Reiko wants to submit her body to Kimito and acts like a complete fool, leaving the entire class stunned. Morning breaks at Saikine Girls Academy, where Kimito is jolted awake by his arch-enemy maid Miyuki. She reveals that Kimito's parents agreed to make him gay in exchange for a complete home renovation and a beautiful bathroom. She then snatches Kimito's phone and tries to send a message to his parents, confessing how much he likes muscular men. However, the paranoid boy stops her just in time. As usual, Kimito sits down for breakfast, constantly under the watchful eyes of the girls. He has long realized that privacy is virtually non-existent for him at this academy. Seeking some solitude, he sits alone in the academy compound, where he notices a small girl furiously scribbling complex mathematical equations on the ground. She's completely in her own world, almost as if she's high on narcotics. Kimito curiously approaches her, but suddenly the girl begins to peel off her clothes, while scribbling in the world-renowned position. Kimito immediately covers the girl, but just then he notices a couple of girls approaching them. Acting quickly, he takes the little girl to his room. Kimito learns that her name is Hakwa, and she's a bona fide math genius who loses herself in equations and sometimes forgets about basic things like her clothes. Hakwa admits she can't dress herself properly, so Kimito reluctantly steps in to help. It's a truly awkward moment, but a necessary one because Hakwa has special needs. After a brief but bizarre exchange, Hakwa mentions that she's hungry, so Kimito, the ultimate commoner, whips up some instant ramen. At first, the aristocratic girl seems hesitant about this commoner food, but she eventually decides to try it out. Within seconds, Hakua devours the entire bowl, and without further ado, lies down on the floor to sleep. Just as Kimito leans in to wake her up, she jolts awake and immediately starts scribbling equations across his desk. Hakua once again starts shedding her clothes. Just as Kimito tries to manage the situation, Aika bursts into the room. Seeing Kimito holding Hakua along with her discarded underwear in his hand, Aika jumps to the wildest conclusion, thinking he's worse than R. Kelly. Later, Kimito accompanies Hakua to her laboratory, a giant building dedicated to mathematicians and scientists. Hakua's maid explains that she is a child prodigy whose mathematical insights are so valuable that they must be photographed immediately. Scientists from all around the world use her work as an inspiration, which leaves Kimito genuinely surprised. When the maid tries to get Hakua her lunch, Kimito reassures her that he gave Hakua some instant ramen. This shocks the maid because Hakua refuses to eat anything other than her regular bland food. But just as he tries to leave, the little girl holds on to Kimito's sleeve and asks him to stay with her. He gently reassures her that she can visit him anytime, while the maid slams her head in disbelief since Hakua is very comfortable with Kimito. That night, Hakua's maid shares the incident with her friends about how she was finally comfortable with another human being. All of them seem genuinely happy for Hakua, but since she is just a little girl, they decide to keep a watchful eye on Kimito. The next day, Kimito is escorted into class by his main piece, Reiko, who is completely in love with him. But before he can respond, the group is joined by Karen Jinryo, a tall girl with striking black hair and a permanent katana accessory. She has a Sigma mindset aura, but when a tiny insect appears in her vision, Karen gets terrified and tries to dispatch the bug with her sword. To the horrified onlookers, it appears as if she's attacking Kimito. He tries to explain the situation to them, but Karen maintains the charade and calls him an insect and challenges him to a battle. She starts chasing after him and attacks him with a strike, but Kimito barely manages to escape. However, Karen launches a whirlwind of sword slashes, which end up slicing the uniforms of all the surrounding girls, leaving them in their underwear. While everyone is terrified, Reiko seems to enjoy this a little more when Kimito's own uniform is also shredded into pieces. The aristocratic girls are deeply embarrassed by this, causing Karen to fume with rage and attack Kimito. Faced with a stupid accusation of being filthy, Kimito is forced to take the offensive instead of running away from her. In this brutal clash, Kimito is left standing on top of Karen. As his pants disintegrate into molecules, his ding-dong hangs right in front of his opponent. After this peculiar half-naked confrontation, Karen is impressed by Kimito's unexpected strength and wonders how a commoner could defeat her in a battle. However, she is determined to win and challenges Kimito to a rematch. Once again, her remaining clothes are cut off, leaving her in her underwear. Convinced of the vast difference in their power, Karen dramatically declares that she will become Kimito's assistant from now on. She vows to serve him until she becomes strong enough to defeat him. With this, Karen cements herself as arguably the most intense member of Kimito's growing circle of friends. Later in the corridors, the other students whisper in awe about the commoner who managed to tame the formidable Karen, turning her into his devoted follower. The scene then shifts to Kimito's room, which has now become the unofficial headquarters of the Commoners Club. Aika is there, sharing her grand plan with Kimito to throw a party to finally become the most popular girl in class. Kimito thinks it's a decent idea but points out the logistical problem. They'll need a lot of phones to invite everyone. At that moment, Hakua, the child prodigy, appears out of nowhere. She settles comfortably on Kimito's lap as if he were her guardian. She then offers to build the necessary phones in her lab, solving their problem instantly. Seeing the effortless closeness between Hakua and Kimito, Aika can't hide her envy. Her irritation only grows when Karen enters the room and formally declares that she now belongs to Kimito. She plans to spend as much time with him as possible until she is strong enough for a true victory, which only sounds like she needs some ground and pound.
Yeah, boy.
The conversation is abruptly cut short by an increasingly jealous Aika. She rudely asks Kimito why he is so nice to everyone else but her. However, Kimito assures her that his feelings for her are pure, which makes him act so straightforward toward her. Overwhelmed with embarrassment, Aika bolts out of the room and lets out a frustrated scream in the hallway, only to be stopped by a maid who hands her a box. Aika returns to the room with the package, revealing custom-built mobile phones that Hakwa had built for them. Since the devices are not connected to the internet, Hakwa volunteers to hack into the academy's Wi-Fi. Aika is now giddy with joy thanks to the little genius, and suggests they take a selfie together. As she tries to snap a picture of herself, Kimito and Hakwa, Karen shyly admits that she wants to be in the shot as well. It's a small and awkward moment, but it marks the official formation of the core members of the Commoners Club at Seikon Academy. The next day, Reiko and her friends corner Kimito in class, hoping to spend some time with him. She invites him to a tea party in her room, a distraction to make him fall in love with her gigantic airbags. One of her friends almost reveals their true intentions, but Reiko immediately covers her mouth. Before Kimito can even process the invitation, Aika swoops in like a territorial bird, grabbing his arm and reminding him they have an urgent Commoner Club meeting. When the other girls press her for details, Aika clams up, too shy to explain the club's weird activities. Without further explanation, she drags Kimito to the hallway and reminds him of their plan, which Kimito doesn't even remember making. Once inside, Kimito apologizes to a disappointed Reiko, who reluctantly wishes him good luck. Meanwhile, back in Reiko's room, her friends are already gossiping about how close Kimito and Aika have been lately. However, Reiko insists that since Aika is a stubborn girl, Kimito is simply counseling her on how to be more friendly. But the gossip-loving girls aren't interested in such a wholesome explanation, and suggest that Kimito and Aika must actually be a couple. Reiko tries to control her emotions and grips the chair because she wants a piece of that Kimito meat. However, her friends even suggest that Aika must have already kissed Kimito in his room, since they are always together. The very idea sends the hopeless romantic Reiko into a spiral. Overcome with jealousy and despair, she lets out a dramatic scream and runs out of the room in tears, leaving her friends completely baffled. Meanwhile, Kimito and Aika are merely planning a party for the entire school, compiling a list of all the commoner food and beverages to serve. Back in the classroom, Kimito notices one of Reiko's friends crying like a peach, and decides to play the hero. Meanwhile, Reiko is also sobbing her eyes out and wearing as little clothing as possible. Just then, Kimito knocks on her door, asking what's wrong, but Reiko insists she can't talk to him. But after some gentle convincing, the milk factory finally opens the door. The moment they lock eyes, they both realize that right now, Reiko looks exactly like Bonnie Blue, and get startled at the same time. Moments later, they share a cup of tea, and she confesses how she lost her temper and yelled at her friend. Kimito listens to her story patiently, and seeing the tears in her eyes, he becomes determined to fix this stupid little mess. He then heads back to his room, hoping for some quiet, only to find the annoying Aika waiting for him. It turns out she was spying on the entire melodrama, and is already fully aware of what's going on. Kimito wants to help Reiko at any cost, and begins devising a plan. Aika realizes he needs some emotional support. So in a surprisingly selfless move, she suggests they redirect their party plans to cheer Reiko up. She even volunteers to use her party accessories for this mission, even though they had different plans. Kimito is touched by her sacrifice, and tells her that she is genuinely a good person deep down. Flustered by this compliment, Aika headbutts him before walking out of the room in embarrassment.
Yo, that one.
Her experience party. Just then, Reiko walks in, but she's not her usual prim and proper self. She's dressed in casual clothes, a perfectly ordinary outfit, leaving her classmates in awe. She has transformed her voice, styled her hair differently, and even applied makeup like a commoner girl. Just then, Reiko pulls out a smartphone from her pocket and sends a text message. The vibration startles one of her classmates, and she tells everyone to open their desks for a surprise gift. All of them have a brand new smartphone, and Reiko even teaches them how to use it. She then gives a heartfelt apology to her friend via text message, like a toxic girlfriend. The two go through a cycle of emotional ovulation and squash their beef with a cringe selfie. Soon, the entire class is obsessed with their new gadgets, making Daddy Kimito giddy with joy. Later, Reiko thanks Kimito for helping her mend things with her friend. Kimito is just glad he could be of help, but Reiko is already planning to confess her feelings. Unfortunately, the stupid cabbage head cuts her off to explain that the whole party was actually Aika's idea. He adds that Aika wanted to throw a party for herself, but decided to help Reiko instead. This is the absolute worst thing he could have said when Reiko was ready to gobble up his biological instrument. Hearing that Aika was the mastermind behind this grand gesture, Reiko spirals into a state of frenzy. She runs off with tears in her eyes and storms directly into Kimito's room, where Aika is lounging and reading comic books. Without holding back, Reiko declares how much she hates Aika, and even calls her an idiot. Aika immediately jumps to her feet and fires back, saying Reiko should be thanking her instead. Within seconds, the two are locked in a full-blown wrestling match on Kimito's bed. Meanwhile, Kimito can only stare at them, mesmerized by their thighs rubbing against each other. When he finally snaps out of it and tries to intervene, he is greeted with a cushion slamming into his face. After Reiko leaves, Kimito and Aika have a quiet moment. Aika opens up about her past, explaining that she used to be just like the other girls. But in 4th grade, A serious illness and high fever changed everything. Because when she woke up, some of her memories were gone, and her personality had shifted. She tells Kimito she doesn't mind the fight with Reiko, because at least now she has his video games and manga to keep her company. Just as the mood gets sentimental, Karen and Hakuwa burst in, each holding applications to officially join the Commoners Club. Moments later, Reiko also arrives and demands to join their club. As Kimito gets up to handle the situation, Aika refuses to let her rivals into their exclusive two-person club. However, Kimito wants everyone to be included, and Reiko thanks him with her thighs. Unfortunately, the sweet moment quickly devolves into chaos. Reiko and Aika start bickering. Hakuwa suddenly gets inspired and begins scribbling equations on the wall, and Karen tries to snap a picture of her. In the middle of this mayhem, Miyuki walks in with a giant pair of scissors to castrate Kimito's ding-dong. In a desperate effort to save his manhood, Kimito plays a video of muscular men and loudly confesses his love for bearded guys. This declaration stops everyone in their tracks, leaving the girls utterly shocked and confused. In the next scene, we see a sterile, soundproof radio station instead of the academy. This girl is Eri Hanai, a famous singer and voice actress who also happens to be Kimito's childhood friend. She has just finished a radio broadcast but doesn't seem very happy about it. Eri gets a text from Kimito, who apparently praised her voice in a way only he could make irritating. Back at Seikain Academy, Kimito wakes up to a familiar sight, a small naked genius sleeping soundly in his bed. He helps the girl get dressed, and they head to the kitchen. Since this potato head has nothing but potatoes in his refrigerator, he starts peeling them, while Hanai politely waits beside him. As Kimito mashes the potatoes, she joins in to make a potato cake. He is genuinely impressed watching the certified genius struggle with the simple act of cooking. However, the mental exertion is too much for her, as Hanai suddenly takes her clothes off and begins doodling complex equations all over the walls. The poor boy does everything he can to prevent this situation from getting more awkward. After the snack, Hakuwa confides in Kimito about how she never had a proper childhood. When Kimito asks her what she did growing up, Hakuwa claims she made a lot of CPU circuit diagrams. Hearing this, he asks her a few stupid riddles about frogs, but she can't guess the right answer. Since the genius is used to knowing everything, she refuses to give up. However, she can't seem to crack the commoner's question and ends up getting annoyed at him. Later, while escorting Hakuwa back to her lab, he notices a handcrafted stuffed animal that looks exactly like him, but she quickly pushes Kimito out of her room and slams the door in embarrassment. Meanwhile, the other members of the Commoners Club are holding a secret war council. Reiko, Karen, and Aika have gathered to discuss what they've deemed the Hakuwa problem. They are seething with jealousy over how much attention Kimito showers on the little genius, complaining that Hakuwa has a foolproof method for getting what she wants. Whenever Kimito ignores her, she just strips naked and starts scribbling on the walls, an act that immediately gets his full attention. For a moment, Reiko wonders if she should strip naked in front of him as well, eager to take a bite of that commoner carrot. Karen seems to have some feelings for Hakuwa, and is committed to unalive Kimito at any cost. Eventually, the girls come to an agreement. They must defeat Hakuwa so that Kimito is left alone. Later, they wait for Hakuwa inside Kimito's room, like a bunch of clingy ex-girlfriends. But when she arrives looking for Kimito, she is disappointed to find he isn't there. As she turns to leave, Karen blocks the exit, and the girls insist that they can have fun together as friends, even without Kimito. What follows next is a painful and awkward attempt to force a friendship. The girls offer her tea and pastries, which she completely ignores in favor of reading a manga. Karen even tries to hand-feed her, but Hakuwa doesn't budge. Even after getting dressed as Kimito, her plan totally backfires. After several failed attempts to get a reaction, Reiko has Miyuki bring Hakuwa's favorite food. This finally gets her attention, and the little girl agrees to eat. Now, of course, a well-fed Hakuwa is an inspired Hakuwa. She tries to take off her clothes, and the wall becomes her canvas once again. The girls try to stop her, but it's like trying to reason with a hurricane. By the time Hakuwa finally tires herself out and falls asleep, the girls are mentally and emotionally drained. They look at the sleeping girl, then at the equation-covered wall, and finally understand the sheer exhaustion Kimito must feel every single day. Just then, Hakuwa's maid arrives to take her back to her lab. After waking her, the little girl proudly announces that she spent the day with her new friends, a comment that makes the three girls' hearts melt. Before leaving, Hakuwa asks Kimito's stupid frog riddle to the group. While the blondie and the brunette sit dumbfounded, Aika, the redhead, answers it correctly. The little girl's face lights up as she realizes that Aika has something more than just shiny balloons. The next day, Kimito is talking to a girl who seems to be mad at him. It turns out that he is playing a dating simulator on his handheld console. The game's main love interest is voiced by his childhood friend Eri Hanai, and he flirts with the 2D character like a classic beta male. Right when he is about to kiss the screen, Aika walks into his room and notices this weirdo talking to a virtual girl. For a moment, she gets mad at him for talking to other girls secretly. However, Kimito explains that since the 2D character in this game is voiced by his friend Eri, he plays this game to support her work. Aika is intrigued by this concept, and she insists on playing this game. He explains the situation, and Aika gets intrigued and gives the game a try. She is immediately sucked in, blushing and getting flustered as she forms a bizarre 50 Shades of Grey connection with the game's protagonist. So Kimito leaves the room to give her some privacy. Aika gets so immersed in the 2D character that she forgets she's actually in Kimito's bed. Just then, Reiko walks into the room looking for Kimito. Aika tells her to park her ass outside, but Reiko insists on waiting for Kimito to return. Now, the two girls are left alone together in the lion's den, a commoner's bedroom. Their natural curiosity gets the better of them, and they begin to investigate. Their first major discovery is Kimito's manga collection. After noting that every single cover features a girl with humongous knockers, they come to the only logical conclusion their sheltered minds can muster. Kimito is a massive pervert who is only interested in girls. However, Aika loses interest in this detective work and leaves the room to grab something from Kimito's mini-fridge. The sheltered girls are shocked to find a bottle of soda in his fridge, which is a completely foreign object to them. Aika claims she found it first and wants to drink it alone, and Reiko reluctantly agrees. But seeing her disappointed, Aika nervously agrees to share the commoner's drink with her. Later, the girls sit down in Kimito's room and pour the soda to finally drink it. After a moment of hesitation, they both take a sip. However, the aggressive fizz is a shock to their whack digestive systems, and they simultaneously spit the drink all over each other. Soaked and sticky, they have no choice but to strip off their uniforms. This leaves the girls inside Kimito's room wearing only their underwear. However, an argument immediately breaks out over the proper way to fold Aika's clothes. One thing leads to another, and the girls find themselves wrestling and tumbling onto Kimito's bed in an awkward, compromising heap. And it is at this exact moment of peak chaos that Kimito returns from his meeting. His eyes go wide as he's met with the unbelievable sight of his two main love interests, half naked and tangled up together on his bed. Later, Kimito is summoned to the principal's office, where he is greeted by the headmistress and Miyuki, whose deadpan expression gives Jason Statham severe competition. They have groundbreaking news. The construction of a special site for their upcoming field trip is complete. Miyuki reveals that they have built an entire theme park called Showmanland. It's a sprawling theme park meticulously designed to replicate a commoner's town. Kimito's role is to be their guide, and Miyuki reminds him that his biological instrument is on the line. With the threat of castration hanging over his head like a guillotine, Kimito has no choice but to accept his new role as tour guide. The much-anticipated journey to Showmanland begins. On the bus, the atmosphere is electric. Reiko and her friends are buzzing with excitement, chattering about the wonders they are about to witness. But Aika is in her own world, nervously rehearsing how to order a teriyaki burger combo with Cola Zero to sound cool. Upon arrival, the girls are led not into a park, but into a strange, windowless room that turns out to be a giant elevator. It descends, and a massive screen activates, revealing their destination, a completely normal, average-looking city. To Kimito, it's a sight that would bore a toddler to tears, but to the girls, it's the most magical thing they have ever seen. They lose their collective minds over the most mundane details, gasping in awe at pedestrian crossings and traffic lights, as if they're witnessing the birth of a new galaxy. One chick even loses her mind, like literally. As everyone hobbles outside, Miyuki announces their first attraction, a blatant parody of McDonald's. She explains the alien concept of placing an order at a counter, waiting for your number to be called, and then the true horror, picking up your own food. The girls are baffled, convinced they'll be waiting for hours for their meals to be cooked, which only adds to Kimito's utter shock. However, Miyuki explains that since this is a fast food restaurant, their food will be ready in just 1 minute, causing chaos all over once again. As they approach the counter, a wave of panic washes over the group. Aika, who had been practicing for this exact moment, completely freezes, as Kimito motivates her to be brave. Meanwhile, Reiko grabs her non-existent balls and steps forward, but she is immediately stumped by the menu. Seeing her total meltdown, Kimito intervenes to save the day. He calmly helps Reiko decide and even gives her the best food items to order. Karen, in a rare moment of pure, unadulterated joy, immediately chooses the combo that comes with a cute doll. After everyone finally gets their food, Kimito notices that Aika has once again isolated herself. So he sits down right between her and the other girls to diffuse the tension. But just as he takes a massive bite of his hamburger, his face lights up with an expression of pure theatrical ecstasy, as if he's just tasted a 5-star meal. His over-the-top reaction shocks his classmates, who can't believe a simple hamburger could be so delicious. Amidst all the wonder and excitement, Aika doesn't seem to be bothered by it, and simply sips her drink. The next stop on the tour is a classic Japanese arcade. The girls are immediately mesmerized by the claw machines. Reiko, with her natural grace, manages to win a stuffed animal, earning a round of applause from her friends. Kimito watches, thinking to himself how Aika would dominate at the dance games. He gently approaches her, hoping to lift her spirits, but he's swarmed by other girls wanting to learn the secrets of the claw machine. Feeling left out, Aika mumbles that she's going to get some juice and slips away. He then teaches the dumb broads how to play the stupid game when he accidentally touches a girl's hand. She almost drips warm gravy from her moist organ, but it stops when she wins a cute doll. The group then gravitates towards a dance machine. Kimito explains the basic concept: follow the arrows on the screen to score points. He demonstrates by dancing, causing everyone to leak engine oil from their legs. As the girls step in to dance, they run into a bunch of tough moves. Just then, Aika steps onto the platform and gives the dumb chicks a breathtaking performance. She moves with a confidence they have never seen before, a jaw-dropping display of skill that leaves the entire class speechless. At last, she gives her dancing partner a thumbs up, but gets immediately embarrassed. But this time, the girls are not looking at her in pity, it's pure admiration. Everyone flocks around her, begging her to teach them how to dance like her. In that moment, Aika's deepest wish finally comes true as she is now extremely popular among her friends. She then leads the group to a coffee shop and flawlessly orders one of the most ridiculously complicated drinks on the menu, leaving everyone impressed. Meanwhile, Reiko simply watches this new shift in the peach dynamics. When the drinks arrive, the girls are stumped by the little hole in the lid. Embracing her role as the experienced one, Aika demonstrates how to drink from it, only to be burned by the hot coffee. While she tries to play it off, her pained expression gives her away. However, this moment breaks the final barrier. Seeing her as both cool and relatable, the girls eagerly ask for her phone number so they can exchange messages. As this unfolds, Karen is spotted off to the side, completely absorbed in cuddling an adorable puppy. Meanwhile, Hakua is seen in the empty halls of the academy looking for Kimito. Her personal maid gently breaks the news that everyone is on a field trip, making her feel all alone. The final stop of the day is a clothing store. Aika has fully embraced her new role in the group and explains to her classmates that ripped trousers are not defective, but a very popular fashion statement. Kimito watches from the sidelines like a proud father, as his bratty little friend is finally connecting with the other girls. His attention is then drawn to Karen, who is awkwardly examining a stylish outfit. She clearly likes it, but is completely out of her element. She stands in front of the mirror, completely enchanted by the color, but quickly discards it to protect her hardcore identity. Kimito tries to encourage her, but she gets spooked and claims she would never wear such stupid clothes. But when Kimito does not believe her, Karen's defense mechanism kicks in, and she draws her katana to threaten him. However, Kimito reminds her that he's already beaten her before, which is enough for the girl to tremble in fear. She takes off her clothes in front of him, and Kimito tells her to try on the clothes. Karen hops inside the dressing room like a monkey, while Kimito waits for her. Moments later, she emerges outside looking absolutely stunning. Kimito, the thigh connoisseur, is speechless as he gazes at all the curves and areas of Karen's body. As she trembles in embarrassment, Kimito assures her that her body is literally perfect, which makes her blush furiously. He tells Karen to dress like that more often so he can look at her every day. The comment is too much for her to handle, so Karen gives him a light smack and runs away in embarrassment. That night, back at the hotel, Aika and Reiko are forced to be roommates, and the tension is so thick you could make a... Aika is busy texting her friends, while Reiko feels a little bit isolated. A brief moment later, Aika surprisingly shares a vulnerable moment with Reiko. She wants Reiko to check her text message before sending it out to all of their friends, which explains how she has a straightforward personality, which gave the impression that she was rude. This slowly caused the girls to be terrified of her, so Aika started to ignore everyone to protect her mental health. She then pulls out her phone and shows Reiko a long message that also talks about how she wants to become friends with everyone. Touched by this moment, Reiko agrees, and the two rivals work together to perfect the message. The next morning, Kimito is jolted awake by his maid, who seems like she's always angry with him. Ironically, the two have started developing a weird kind of friendship. Later, all the girls gather around for the morning breakfast. It turns out that Aika's message was well received, as the girls warmly invite her to join their table, making her incredibly happy. Later, Kimito catches up with her by the elevators and congratulates her on achieving her goal. And then, with the emotional intelligence of Joe Biden, he delivers a devastating blow. He explains that since Aika is now a popular girl, her role in the Commoners Club is officially over. He cheerfully tells her how she must now maintain her position by hanging out at tea parties. This revelation shatters Aika's world as the club was her lifeline, her special connection to him. As the elevator doors close on her heartbroken face, she is left utterly crushed. Seeking to let his balls breathe for a minute, Kimito heads to the hot baths, but his annoying friend Aika once appears in a towel to soak away her sorrow. As the two argue over who gets to use the hot bath, Aika's friends suddenly enter the pool area. In a blind panic, Kimito dives underwater to hide from the semi-naked girls. Aika instinctively shields his position with her dumpers, while her friends chat about some dumb stuff. Trapped beneath the surface, Kimito starts to run out of air, so he raises his head to take a breath, but he ends up with a full view of Aika's private parts. As he submerges himself underwater, the girls continue talking, while Aika hides him from her friends. Kimito desperately needs to take a breath, so he mistakenly grabs Aika's tankers, which results in an elbow shot from her. Moments later, as the girls leave the pool area, Aika is shocked to find Kimito motionless. She immediately pulls his disgusting limp body from the water and begins performing CPR. She presses her lips to his, hoping to breathe air into his lungs. At this exact moment of maximum misunderstanding, two of her friends return to the pool area, walking in on what looks like a passionate kiss between passionate lovers. The next day, the rumor had spread like wildfire. The entire academy is buzzing with the news that Kimito and Aika are a couple. The clueless thigh connoisseur walks up to Aika to understand what's happening. But just then, a furious Karen approaches him and punches him hard in his face before running away. Back in Kimito's room, the Commoners Club reconvenes for an emergency meeting. Aika claims she did not kiss Kimito, which relieves the graceful Reiko. She tells Aika to clear the misunderstanding and send a message to all her friends. But just then, Kimito walks into the room, and Aika decides to wait a little longer to send out that message. This causes another fallout between the two girls. The next morning, Miyuki is seen walking through the academy's garden by herself. She runs into an aristocratic girl who is on her morning run. However, she is confused as to why Miyuki is working as a servant. It is revealed that Miyuki belongs to a family of incredibly high status, making her position as a maid a deep mystery. However, she politely ignores the aristocratic Peach and walks away. Miyuki then walks into Kimito's room to wake him up, but surprisingly, she gently kisses him on the lips. As always, Kimito wakes up with Miyuki staring down at him with those killer eyes. The day begins with Kimito showing Aika a new commoner marvel, a fortune-telling app. The 2D animated girl in the app claims that Aika has no filter on what she says and gets hurt over the smallest things. This is extremely exciting to her, and she is convinced that the app can also see the future. When Kimito mentions that her lucky color is green, Aika dresses up in an entire green outfit to remain lucky at all times. To fully activate this, Kimito insists she must carry green leaves in her hands and perform a special dance for good fortune. Aika is hard to prank, but this time she believes Kimito's lies and starts dancing like Andrew Tate's brother. Just as she is comically practicing the gesture, the other girls arrive to witness the bizarre spectacle. After Kimito explains the situation, the girls decide to test the app. It calls Reiko a social butterfly, and Karen a tough personality on the outside, who is actually a softie on the inside. Hakwa is even more accurate, as the 2D fortune teller tags her as a scientist with creative vision. However, Karen refuses to believe she is a softie and tries to fight with Kimito. When he redoes the test, it calls Karen a scatterbrained brain-dumb chick with huge buttocks, making her furious. However, the real fun begins with the compatibility test, and everyone agrees to it, which starts making Kimito slightly intimidated. They decide to follow alphabetical order, and Aika goes first to check her compatibility with Kimito. As the girls tower over him with their disgusting sponges to check the results, they find out that she got an 80% compatibility score with Kimito. Aika becomes ecstatic after finding out they can make a very loving couple, and screams in excitement. Reiko goes next with the compatibility test and gets a whopping 90% score, easily beating the little Aika. Realizing that she can even get railed by Kimito with this score, Reiko cannot contain her imagination. She starts daydreaming about her night with Kimito, while Aika fumes with anger. Meanwhile, Hakwa gets a perfectly neutral 50%, which she accepts with logical detachment. Karen, initially refusing, finally caves to peer pressure. To everyone's surprise, she gets a soul-crushing 0% compatibility and furiously pulls out her katana. Just then, Kimito realizes that he made an error with the date of birth and redoes the test. This churns out a perfect score of 100% compatibility, and also mentions that her romantic attacks will become more aggressive. As Aika and Reiko fight to get the perfect score, they start changing the details to be the perfect partner for Kimito. This results in an odd environment in the room, as the two girls fight each other, while Karen is mesmerized by Kimito and starts imagining stuff with him. At this point, Karen becomes the voice of reason, and tells the girls to control their hormones. However, she is eventually dragged into this argument. Hakwa turns to Kimito, and he instantly realizes she is hungry. Seeing this as his chance to escape the chaos, Kimito slips away with her to go make a potato cake. The next day, Miyuki wakes him with her usual gothic presence. But this time, Kimito asks why she is always so close to him in the morning. While Miyuki stands in silence, he suggests that his phone alarm can make her job easier, but she claims that it's her duty, and she must wake him up like a creep. However, when Kimito mentions that using a phone alarm is going to save her a lot of energy, Miyuki calmly offers to break his Samsung phone as an alternative, and ends the discussion. Later, Kimito watches some UFC fights in a corridor to enjoy a moment of peace, but he is interrupted by a shy-looking Karen. Her mind flashes back to the app's prediction, and takes the suggestion literally. Without a second thought, she launches a surprise attack at Kimito, which slightly cuts his jacket. Immediately horrified by what she's done, her aggressive facade crumbles, and she insists on taking him to her room to settle this battle. While Kimito is hesitant at first, Karen grabs his hand and drags him inside her room. Kimito is surprised to find her room is as Spartan as a dojo, as if she is Naruto's cousin. As she prepares her sewing kit, Karen asks him to turn around while she changes into the stylish outfit they bought together at Showman Land. Seconds later, Kimito feels the presence of a hot Karen right behind him, and turns around. He can't stop staring at those giant soft pillows on her chest, and even looks thirstily at her pants. Kimito compliments her for her attire, making her blush. While she meticulously repairs his jacket, Kimito offhandedly mentions how Karen would make an amazing waifu, a remark that causes her to completely lose composure. As she hands the jacket back to him, she also notices his torn shirt and insists on fixing it. She forces Kimito to take it off and peels it from his body. As Kimito lies on the ground, Karen approaches close to him and gazes at his disgusting, filthy body. She even takes a bold move to touch him and understands why he is stronger than her. Sensing her insecurity, Kimito praises her incredible dedication and skill, calling it beautiful. His sincere words touch her deeply, leaving her flustered and speechless. However, their sensual moment is shattered by Aika, Reiko, and Hakuya barging into the room, looking for them. In a blind panic, Karen shoves the half-naked Kimito into her wardrobe. Inside the cramped darkness, Kimito becomes acutely aware of Karen's tiger and ends up collapsing on her chest. This causes a slight commotion inside, which is too much for the flimsy furniture. As a result, the wardrobe door bursts open, collapsing and spilling its contents onto the floor. Aika, Reiko, and Hakuya stare in stunned silence at the tangled, compromising heap of a shirtless Kimito and a mortified Karen. Thinking fast as Aika picks up a phone showing a bunch of muscular men, which he was watching earlier. Nervously, Kimito improvises and claims that he was simply reading Karen's future, which requires them to be half-naked. However, Aika has been pranked one too many times by him, and locks his leg like the wrestlers in his mobile phone. On the other hand, Hakuya is dealing with the emotional fallout from the compatibility test. She is left in quite a melancholy over her 50% score. When her maid arrives to check up on her, she notices Hakuya has made a drawing of Kamito's face on her plate like a complete psychopath. She even notices the handmade Kamito doll on her bedside, and gets concerned for her well-being. As a result, the maid calls an emergency council meeting with her colleagues, and the verdict is unanimous: the little genius is in love. Filled with a sense of righteous purpose, the maid Peaches hatch a grand elaborate plan to make Kimito fall in love with Hakuya. Meanwhile, back in the Commoners Club, Kimito is giving a lecture on another bizarre aspect of his world: maid cafes. While the girls have their own ideas about what this might be, Kimito explains that they are themed restaurants where waitresses role-play as maids. This is real nutcrack for the ladies, and they curiously listen to this rambling. Kimito adds that maids in the commoners' world are vastly different from the professionals who are in this academy. When Reiko asks if he likes maids, Kimito agrees, because in his society it's almost a fantasy to have a maid. Hearing this, Reiko declares that they must immediately book a session at the academy's cafeteria to investigate this commoner fantasy firsthand. When Kimito arrives, he finds his friends have fully committed to the bit. They are all dressed in frilly maid uniforms, ready to serve him. Reiko, taking on the role of head maid, dramatically calls him master. Kimito explains that cafe maids must serve their customers with love, and Aika gets jealous of Reiko stealing his attention. However, Kimito diverts their attention and teaches them that if he orders a drink, they must deliver it with proper love. Since the girls have no idea what this creep is talking about, Karen threatens him to demonstrate. So Kimito stands up and shows them how the food is to be delivered with love, acting almost like a Japanese James Charles. The girls find it utterly ridiculous, and they leave this Jeffrey Epstein wannabe inside the cafe by himself. Meanwhile, the maid council learns about Kimito's attraction towards maids and starts their own preparation. Later, Aika brings a rice omelet for Kimito and tries to deliver it with love, but she finds it extremely cringe. Karen draws an injured rabbit with ketchup on his plate like a serial unalover, while she pretends to bleed on top of it. The sweet Hakuya tries to entertain Kimito by playing rock, paper, scissors, but she is eventually stopped by Reiko. She then starts singing a Kanye West song, but it's so terrible that the very foundations of the building shake and glasses shatter, causing mayhem all around. As Aika criticizes her singing, another argument breaks out, while Hakuya is once again stripped naked while scribbling her equations on the dinner table. From the hallway, Hakuya's real maids are observing the entire disaster. Since they witnessed Kimito in the middle of this chaos, they arrived at a completely wrong conclusion that Kimito has a maid fetish. Later, Hakuya's head maid approaches Kimito, and under the guise of showing him what real maids in action look like, invites him to Hakuya's lab. This is the start of their orchestrated date. She takes them inside the hallway and proceeds to show him around. Kimito watches in awe as Hakuya enters a creative trance, almost like Stephen Hawking in his office, when he was not twisted up like a noodle. He notices how the maids move in silent, synchronized precision to transcribe her work, and gets impressed by it. Later, the maid brings Hakuya to Kimito, and she asks the little girl to show him around the facility. Seeing Hakuya grab his hands, all the maids lose their minds in excitement like a bunch of creeps. She then takes Kimito to a giant indoor sandbox designed for Hakuwa to clear her mind. As Kimito and Hakuwa begin to play together, they notice the maids are still there, watching them with sadistic intensity, claiming it's their free time. When lunchtime arrives, the maids escort them to the staff cafeteria, where Kimito and Hakuwa hold hands like brother and sister. As they reach the dining area, the maid tells him that since they don't have extra plates, Kimito and Hakuwa have to share a single plate. Even the food has creepy sentences written all over, which naturally makes Kimito extremely awkward. Kimito notices a bunch of empty plates, but another maid pretends to fall and breaks all of them. With no other option, he starts feeding the little girl, but the creepy maids all yelp in excitement. The spoons are also tipped over by one of the maids, which gets weirder every second. Now Kimito is forced to use the same spoon, while Hakuwa sweetly feeds him. At last, just as the two are sharing a drink from the same cup, Miyuki enters the room. Her ice-cold presence immediately snaps the other maids to attention. She informs them that an urgent request from a company came in while they were slacking off like a bunch of idiots on Jake Paul's podcast. Her tone is sharp, and the maids scatter. Afterwards, Kimito apologizes to Hakuwa's maid for the trouble, admitting that even after all that, he's still not sure what a maid's job really entails. But he genuinely adds that because of this bizarre day, he was able to see a whole new side of Hakuwa's personality. That night, the maids celebrate their supposed victory. They are in a delusional belief that Kimito is attracted to Hakuwa, and they will soon be in a relationship. Meanwhile, all the other girls start practicing how to become better maids in their rooms, as they all want a piece of that Kimito barbecue. The next day, Kimito decides it's time to execute his masterpiece of pranks. He calls Aika to his room for a private meeting, telling her he wants to speak with her and her alone. The request makes her release her hormones, her mind immediately jumping to romantic conclusions. As Kimito asks her to take a seat in his bed, she nervously crashes beside him. Just then, he presents her with a gift, while her thighs flutter with happiness. When she asks why he is giving her a gift randomly, Kimito maintains his composure and stays silent. He then asks Aika to open the box, which contains a stupid-looking bright yellow suit. Kimito, with the solemn expression of a sage, tells her this is a secret weapon that will finally make her the most popular girl in school. Seizing the intimate moment, Aika asks him if this is some weird prank he's playing on her. Kimito's balls are in danger, so he quickly explains with deep gravity that wearing a yellow suit and pointing fingers is considered sacred between close commoner friends. Aika has been pranked by him several times, so she gets suspicious. However, Kimito is prepared for this, and he shows her a video of the real-life Japanese comedian Dandy Sakano, famous for his finger gesture. He then follows this with a barrage of internet searches showing thousands of fans imitating the gesture. Aika does not realize this is a prank, but with such a meticulously crafted prank, she is completely convinced. Within minutes, Aika changes into her new outfit, and even tries out the weird gesture. Kimito takes a couple of pictures of her, and even teaches her some extra absurd moves. As the girl celebrates by imitating a famous celebrity, Kimito prepares himself to get beaten after revealing the truth about his prank. But right then, Aika bolts from the room, eager to spread the gospel of the finger gesture to the entire academy. As Kimito chases after her, he runs headfirst into Miyuki. His hands automatically move towards her beautifully crafted thighs, as he stares right at her tiger. After a brief awkward moment, he springs out of Miyuki's skirt, while she lies down on the floor, ready to surrender herself to Kimito's tongue. As he apologizes for his mistake, Miyuki casually mentions how she does not mind him touching him. Meanwhile, Aika is running down the hallway in her yellow suit, where Reiko notices her. She then chases after Aika, demanding to know what this outfit is about. Eventually, she explains how this suit is worn by a famous commoner called Dandy Sakano. But when she makes the finger gesture, Reiko realizes this girl has lost her marbles. When she finds out that Kimito gave her this outfit, Reiko's jealousy turns into a desire to join in this weird trend. So the two start practicing the weird finger gesture together like a couple of dumbos. By the time Kimito arrives at his classroom, the finger gesture pandemic has taken over. The entire class is dressed in yellow and performing the gesture in unison. Later, the tone shifts dramatically. Reiko is walking down the hall when she overhears Kimito on the phone with an old friend from home. He's complaining about how tired he's getting of the academy since there are only chicks in this place. He cannot handle the stress of being careful around girls all the time, and mentions how guys are way better friends than girls. Reiko misinterprets this as him wanting to leave the school for good. Without wasting any time, she immediately gathers the Commoners Club, Aika, Karen, and Hakuwa for an emergency meeting to share the terrible news. They must now come up with a plan to stop him from leaving. In a stroke of absolute unhinged genius, Aika suggests the obvious solution. If Kimito misses having guys around, then they should become boys. Since they cannot grow a ding-dong overnight, they begin to brainstorm. Karen gets up with a stupid idea and explains how every time she faced off with Kimito, he always looked at her thighs. So the girls decide to practice his habit of staring down at girls' legs. Then, Remembering his fake fetish, they ask a maid to bring them a muscle suit. Aika wins the rock-paper-scissors battle to wear it, but she ends up looking like a liver king. They also add a samurai ponytail, along with a bow tie for a touch of class. For the crucial finishing touch, they need a manly scent. So after some careful deliberation, the girls decide on the most masculine aroma they can think of: grilled meat seasoning. Fully prepared, all the girls try to act tough and masculine and march to Kimito's room. He is greeted by a ridiculous and confusing sight, asking them why they smell like a barbecue. However, the girls proudly explain their plan. They heard he was considering leaving because he missed his male classmates, so they put on this performance to convince him to stay. Kimito is stunned into silence for a moment, looking at the absurd meat-scented cross-dressing mess in front of him. Aika flexes in her muscle suit. Reiko tries to act cool and aloof. Karen stands stoically, and Hakua just stares blankly. It is the most insane, misguided, and heartfelt thing anyone has ever done for him. However, Kimito spreads a warm smile across his face and reassures them that they don't need to worry. He has no intention to leave the academy and promises to remain at the school. The next day, Kimito walks through the peaceful compound of the academy to cool off his sweaty tennis balls. He finds himself walking back to his empty classroom, having forgotten his pencil case. To his surprise, he finds Reiko diligently replenishing the chalk for the teachers. Kimito lets out a gentle smile, as she is actually a pure-hearted girl. As the two stand together by the window, they talk about some dumb stuff like how beautiful the skies are. Kimito notices how stunning Reiko looks right now, and immediately shifts his gaze. To avoid distraction, she closes the curtains, and decides to seize the intimate moment. Reiko expresses her desire to help him with the flower arranging class. Kimito knows this is just a smokescreen for a ground-and-pound ceremony, and quickly agrees to her request. Then Reiko makes a much bolder move, asking him to start calling her by her first name. She wants them to be more than friends, and convinces him to drop the formalities from now on. Later, the Commoners Club gathers in Kimito's room to discuss their agenda for the day. But Reiko coyly reminds Kimito not to forget their secret plan, immediately sparking Aika's suspicion and jealousy. Aika and Karen demand to know what they're plotting, but Kimito is once again caught between the chicks' quarrel. Meanwhile, Reiko enjoys the attention and simply smiles at the angry girls. However, their bickering is cut short when two maids enter the room, summoning both Reiko and Kimito to the headmistress's office. Since Reiko was not informed about their visit, she seems a little bothered by it. Inside the office, they are greeted by Reiko's family, her overbearing mother and her surprisingly timid older brother Masami. After the mother shares pleasantries with Reiko, her gaze shifts toward this disgusting boy, Kimito. The nervous boy has no idea what this is about and introduces himself. Masami is immediately hostile towards Kimito, furious that a boy is allowed near his precious sister. However, Reiko tells him that she is leaking a lot of gravy these days and is enjoying her time at school. Even then, Masami is not satisfied and yells at Kimito, but Reiko steps in to defend her potential lover and becomes furious at him. Miyuki tries to de-escalate the situation and explains that Kimito is a gay man, and he likes men with muscular bodies. This freaks out Masami even more, but his mother tells him to think with his head, not with his ding-dong. She then cuts in with a grave announcement that silences the room. She tells Reiko that her marriage has been finalized, and she must leave the academy immediately to join her future husband. The news hits like a physical blow, as Reiko glances at Kimito with her loving eyes. Seeing this, the mother requests him to leave the room, and he sadly walks out, feeling like Aden Ross in front of Andrew Tate. Back in the club room, Kimito relays the horrible news about Reiko. The girls are stunned to hear this, and all of them stand there with droopy faces. Kimito points out that Reiko is clearly miserable and proposes they do something to stop the engagement. He cannot understand how Reiko's mother could do something so cruel to her own daughter. This galvanizes the group with a new purpose, as they all partner up one last time. Later, in the courtyard, they run into Masami again. He's clearly against Reiko's marriage, and frantically tries to give Kimito his email address to coordinate a plan. However, his mother suddenly appears and forces him to leave before they can come up with a plan. That night, the club members gather around without Reiko, but the atmosphere is empty and depressing. Everyone starts imagining their life without Reiko, and it's painfully clear that everyone deeply wanted to clap that juicy can of tuna. In a moment of incredible character growth, Aika, Reiko's biggest rival, admits that she's worried and can't just stand by and do nothing. Driven by a new sense of solidarity, Aika decides to call Reiko, but the school phones are restricted. However, Hakua does her magic and easily disables the limiter, turning them into normal cell phones. That night, Aika makes the call, which makes Reiko extremely happy. The two start talking, but Reiko tries to be dutiful, saying she must obey her family's commands. Aika listens to her with tears in her eyes and tells her to stop acting like a Republican president before the election. She reminds Reiko that if she leaves, she'll be alone in gym class, and that she is a precious friend to them all. Finally, Reiko breaks her composure and confesses that she does not want to get married, and that she wants to stay with her friends forever. That was all Aika needed. She promises Reiko to be patient until they find a way to save her. The next day, Aika reveals that Reiko wants to stay in the academy, so the rescue mission is on. Hakua immediately retrieves Masami's email address, and a plan is in place. Since the girls are aristocratic, Kimito takes leadership of the mission and declares war against arranged marriages like true Democrats. That night, the five of them, Kimito, Aika, Reiko, Hakua, and Karen, carefully sneak out of the academy under the cover of darkness. Their escape is almost flawless, almost as if they have been crawling with each other every night. But, just as they reach a safe area, the group is discovered by the last person they wanted to see, Miyuki. For a tense moment, all of the students think their plan is over, before it even began. However, Miyuki simply asks if this is an official Commoners Club activity. When Kimito confirms that it is, she turns a blind eye. This was her cryptic permission, allowing the group to rescue Reiko at any cost. Outside, another maid shows them the way, and they slip out of the gates. They then get inside a sleek black car waiting for them. It turns out to be none other than Masami, and the two muscular men who first kidnapped Kimito. As they settle in, Masami gives his signal, and the car drives off into the night to crash a wedding and rescue Reiko once and for all. As the car reaches the major highway, Kimito asks Masami why he trusted him. Masami explains that since he is an aristocrat himself, he cannot be the one to crash a family wedding. It's a stupid logic, but it makes sense. Soon, the car pulls up to a hill overlooking Reiko's family mansion. Since the estate is crawling with extra security guards, Masami realizes that his plan has been exposed. So he appoints Kimito the commander of this mission and volunteers to risk his life for his sister. Karen, on the other hand, is determined to use her swords to defeat the guards because for her, this is not a threat, it's an invitation. Before anyone can formulate a proper plan, Karen leaps down the hill and charges headlong into the fray. She pulls out her sword like Sasuke, altering all the guards nearby. Then, Karen unleashes her first attack, cracking the ground like a birthday cake. After all the guards are eradicated, Karen decides to launch her most powerful attack. Her sword creates a blade of fire so potent that it carves a massive hole in the mansion wall, creating a wide-open entrance for Reiko's friends. Just then, they are surrounded by a swarm of security guards, leaving no room for escape. But Karen urges everyone to go inside the building, while she deals with the nasty security guards. She then unleashes her signature whirlwind technique, a spinning vortex of swordplay that strips them of their entire uniforms. On the other hand, Kimito, Aika, and Hakua rush inside, but their path is immediately blocked by the family's butler, Takemiya, a man who looks like he has an orange Bugatti. He approaches Masami and tries to convince him to drop this battle with his own family. But he ignores the butler and charges at him. Unfortunately, his attack is intercepted by Takemiya, causing Masami to collapse on the floor. But the battle has just begun. These two engage in a fierce, high-stakes duel, while Kimito, Aika, and Hakua press forward. Once inside, they encounter the next layer of security, a swarm of high-tech drones ready to attack them. But Aika embraces her delusional confidence and grabs a nearby vase and shatters it into pieces. She then expertly flings the broken pieces like Ukrainian soldiers, taking down the drones one by one. However, their victory is short-lived as a series of heavy security doors begins to close behind them, threatening to seal them off. But the little genius Hakua looks for the control room so she can hack the system to intercept the doors. Unfortunately, the final door is closing too fast, causing anxiety all around. Just then, the two muscular men from the car appear out of nowhere, holding the massive metal door open with sheer brute force. Hakua slips through, and she immediately starts hacking the mansion's main computer. In just a few seconds, all the metal doors slide open once again. However, they are faced by their final enemy, a giant, Power Rangers-looking robot that blocks their path to the meeting room. But before the robot can crush them, Karen makes her dramatic re-entrance, now inexplicably dressed in a full samurai outfit. With a single devastating attack that is utterly ridiculous, she slices the robot clean in half. In a final attack, she manages to disable the robot, but also shreds all of her clothes, leaving her entirely naked on top of the robot. The battle between Takemiya and Masami gets even more brutal, as neither of them seems to lose their stamina. With the path clear, Hakua works her final bit of magic, hacking the leftover drones and reconfiguring them into a pair of makeshift rocket shoes for Kimito. He blasts through the mansion hallway and bursts into the formal meeting room, just as the engagement is about to be finalized. Seeing this, Reiko's mother gets up and politely asks him to leave, but Kimito declares his complete and total disagreement with the arranged marriage. Reiko's mother, cold and unflinching, tells him that a commoner couldn't possibly understand the importance of their traditions. Just as Aika and Hakua enter the room, Reiko starts shivering in agony because it's been 10 hours since she last sniffed Kimito's omelet. In response, Kimito delivers a heartfelt speech, insisting that despite their different worlds, They have all managed to become precious friends, and Reiko's giant watermelons are needed in the academy for research purposes. Karen also arrives with her airbags barely covered to distract everyone's attention. Aika also steps in, and with tears in her eyes, she announces that Reiko has the best knockers in the academy. At last, they all make their stupid finger gesture to show their support for Reiko. Finally, with tears pouring from her eyes, Reiko finds her voice. She stands up and announces that she will leave the family. Her mother warns her of the consequences. She will lose her status, her right to attend the academy, and become an ordinary girl. Kimito immediately interjects, assuring her that there's no problem, she can come live with him. He pulls Reiko away from her mother and promises to keep her happy. This declaration prompts Reiko's father to finally support her decision. In a final stunning twist, Reiko's mother begins to laugh like a witch. It turns out that the entire ordeal was orchestrated to test Reiko's ability to stand up for herself. She tells her daughter she is free to marry whomever she wishes, then turns to Kimito and asks him to take care of her forever, a statement that everyone in the room interprets as a marriage proposal. This causes a debate in the room, as the other girls start getting jealous. The scene cuts back to the academy, in the familiar chaos of Kimito's room. He is trying to apologize to Reiko for the misunderstanding his words caused. However, she simply reminds Kimito to start calling her by her first name. Before they can resolve anything, the rest of the girls jump in. The old arguments fire back up, a heated debate over who has the strongest claim to Kimito's affection. As Aika and Reiko bicker, Karen watches with a frustrated sigh, and Hakwa, getting inspired by the passionate energy in the room, strips off her clothes and begins scribbling equations on the wall. The Commoners Club is back together, and their perfectly dysfunctional dynamic is restored. If you want to see more videos like this, comment naughty below. Until then, subscribe, like, and share this video with all of your friends.